Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Robin Richie of Imagine That with Robin Richie. And before I go any further, and yes, you are logged on to Imagine That with Robin Richie, I want to say to you, Happy New Year, happy everything. It gives me great pleasure to present to you Rock and Roll Hall of Fame designing duo, none other than Spencer Drate and Judith Salavetz.
And thank you for having us on. We're looking forward to this interview, and you're one of the greats. We love it. We love being on with you.
Well, I love you guys, and I thank you.
We are honored, actually, to be on your show and
Definitely.
looking forward to sharing, our history, a little bit of our history, not all of it, just a little bit of it.
Finding what you just said, this is a really great interview because I think we're going to talk about our diverse creative history, getting beyond music and into other famous design areas like logo design, book design, and book authors, and so forth and so on. So this is a very special interview for us, just to tell you.
Wonderful. It's magnificent. Well, I would love to begin with some visuals, and you can kind of talk us through what it is that we're seeing.
If that's okay.
Take the floor.
45 RPM. They had the idea of having the first 45 record sleeve history visual book. And what happened is it's like the Beatles, this story. It really is. It's like all the publishers, I thought it'd be a slam dunk. There were all these LP books out, nothing about 45. And all of a sudden, which is history, right? With all the famous musicians, I don't have to tell you in the book. But it started off with all the publishers turning it down. And like the Beatles, it's like the last one to pick them, da-da-da. So I went to Princeton Architectural Press, which was a small press. They put out very visionary books on David Byrne, Paula Scher, etc. They bought the book, hardly got anything. But what happened was the first year, the book with no promotion stole 10,000. And then after that, went to a quantity of 22,500 books worldwide on different deals. And so we progressed to the second book, 545, and Judith and I collaborated on, and was with Collins Design. And that was an enormous book, and it's laid out, beautiful layout with left to right, with the sleeves going, meeting with each other throughout the book, and an enormous amount of gorgeous sleeves in history, indie sleeves, commercial sleeves. We didn't choose them, by the way, for the artists. We chose them for the graphics. Literally, the design of the sleeve was important to us, but it crossed over into major groups, so that was a big book, a very important book. And both those books are now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archival library collection, along with our other parts of the Rock Hall collection, our 45s and LP designs, and also our 3 interviews from Indie Cafe 2 show, which is another big thing. So we're in 3 areas of the Rock Hall. It's a very honor thing for us.
And the magnificent part about it is that you two are the only ones who hold that distinction. I mean, it's incredible as designers.
Yeah, it's an amazing feat. I mean, we kind of freaked out at it. Judith one day called me up and said, "Why the hell are we in here?" I said, "Judith, don't ask any questions. They respect us. That's it. End of story." So that's, what I mean? You get kind of shocked by it in a way. I mean, I still can't take it all in. I mean, we're in 3 different areas. And we're the only designers, by the way, that have our own archival collection within the Rock Hall archival collection. That's another point. So, our work is being shown. So that's another big thing. So, and that happened actually because Joan Jett, the year Joan Jett, Lou Reed got inducted, I was asked to send some visuals in for the induction on both sides. And what happened is they called me up after the induction and they said, "Well, can you and Judith donate some sleeves to the vinyl. And I said, oh, yeah, of course. And I packaged some LPs, 45, sent it in, not expecting anything. And then several days later, they said, well, we're going to give you your own archival collection, which is totally different. So we're not in the whole batch. We have our own thing where people know about, and you can lock on and see it. So that was a big thing. Not all our work is in it. There were certain pieces that are in it, that we did, which are phenomenal, like Fear of Music and Joan Jett and Bon Jovi's first album and Marshall Crenshaw, certain really beautiful pieces. Yeah, it's a little bit of a list, but it's such a great honor to be in there, to be recognized by such a major institution.
Absolutely. And we actually do have some of those images to share with our Imagine That with Robin Richie viewers. So I'll tell you though, Spencer, I would love for the two of you to elaborate about the very first project.
Yeah, Judith, the upper left picture of Marshall Crenshaw, that's the one that I met Judith, and I said, I saw her artwork, and I said, oh my God, in my head, I said, she's phenomenal. I saw her silk screen. Remember, Judith, I saw her? And then I said, there's something about her that's amazing art-wise and design-wise I picked up, just intuitively. And sure enough, I brought her in on the Marshall Crenshaw. I was finishing up the project, but I needed color in if you bring it back on the name Marshall Crenshaw, and that's an important feature because the color in the title of his name has got to blend in with the background, and I really couldn't figure out what color. She picked out this phenomenal color, which you see, which blends in perfectly. That album also was entered in the AIGA cover show and won with 7 other covers for the 3 years of best album covers. Only 7 were chosen. And Annie Leibovitz was a judge. Annie Leibovitz was a judge, and she voted it in. And that's gorgeous cover. So I said, well, from then on, let's work together, I thought in my mind, and see where that goes. And here we are. And I couldn't, for some reason, Judith got it, but I didn't. I couldn't get Rinky Tink, she's a little runaway, da-da-da-da-da. Like when I did Billy Squier and I heard the cassette of that, it was phenomenal. I said, oh my God, all those songs are Billy Squier. And that album turned out to be multi-platinum, by the way. Not that John didn't. He became platinum on this album. But I couldn't pick up the song, and Judith picked it up right away. I mean, she's so good at that. I mean, she has such an ear. And then
he was a heartthrob.
Oh my God. I mean, he walks into our office looking so cute, and he was so, I mean, those days I look at his hair and he's young and then he hands us a cassette that blew me away. It didn't blow Spencer away, but I thought, oh my gosh, this guy is going to be rock and roll history, which he was, which turned out to be the case.
He was
Spencer wasn't so.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, I didn't get it.
No, but
I didn't get it. I didn't get it. I did not get it.
We did get the job of designing that 12-inch cover, as well as designing a logo for him. And
right.
John was he was very involved in a way that he wanted to be present. I mean, he didn't do anything. He didn't give us any, advice or tell us, what we should be doing or not doing in terms of the cover. But he was there in our studio practically every day, just sitting on our couch while Spencer and I were working at the drawing tables. Of course, we set up the photo shoot, and I believe it was the first and last time I ever did,
styling.
A styling for a band. It was, I styled the band.
For the band.
Believe it or not, I can't even believe that I did that, but I did. And
of all people, it was Bon Jovi.
Yeah, let me add to that story. Let me give you the real lowdown on very important stuff. Like Arthur Mann was a friend of ours and he signed Cinderella and Bon Jovi. So he calls me up and he said, "You and Judith want to work on Bon Jovi?" And I said, "Okay." And then he said, "What do you think of the name?" And I said, "Well, Bon Jovi to me sounds like Van Halen. Bon Jovi, Van Halen." And you know what? After that, John would always say, "Spencer, did you see the Jump video of Van Halen?" Then he later in his life used all the Van Halen stable, the stylus, everything. He was really locked in with Van Halen, which was really interesting. But I got to give credit to Arthur Mann, one of our best friends who was an entertainment lawyer involved with very big entertainment. And he gave us the job. And that was one of the, what led us to a lot of big things in life,
Wonderful. Let's talk a little about Joan Jett and the Black Hawk and their relationship.
Well, Joan, me and Judith would always go up to Lieber Krebs' office, and they had their office there. And I found her, like I would walk into the office here on the right, writing letters to her fans, literally. I found her very warm person for us. And obviously she liked us because we did all these album covers for her, many. And also, I got to bring in Meryl Laguna, the manager. Meryl was like the art director. She was one half of the management with Kenny Laguna, Meryl Laguna. And Meryl would give us pictures for the front cover. And from there, we took off on whatever. So like Glorious Results, Brian Airy's photograph on the front cover, the famous jump shot, Dee Dee Zill photograph. And of course, we said no type on the front with Dee Dee Zill. We did something phenomenal. We put the clear sticker on the shrink wrap, rip it off, and there's a famous jump shot with the yellow background, which is one of her I believe one of the best albums she ever did. The lower photograph is very famous for the racing car. I saw that photograph on Kenny Laguna's desk, and that's how that formed. If I didn't see that photo, I wouldn't have known about it. And I said, that's the back cover. Look at that photograph. It's very grainy. It's a very raw photograph. It's beautiful. And that became the back cover of Glorious Results on there. And yeah, so the top right, we got Brian Airy's. Then the famous black and white with the guitar around the head. That's from an album called Pure and Simple. That's the poster. It's by George Holst, who's the photographer. He did an amazing shoot on that album. To the left of the yellow cover, with a photograph of Joan with her hand on her head. That's a very, very good story. That cover I laid out to think of the USA cover. But what they did is they turned that down, and the cover on the left of it in brown background with Joan became the USA cover. But then they used that cover for the Japan release. It's an interesting story, which I was so glad because, and Judith worked on that with me, and the background that give a grit feel, that brown on the left. Those are phenomenal Joan Jett albums. And the Kunster single she put out on a vinyl, 45 vinyl. Kenny was into 45 vinyl. I mean, he would produce these albums on vinyl. And now they have some of these albums reissued on vinyl, by the way, like the Jump Shot album and Glorious Results is on a reissue. So it's interesting. I mean, vinyl is huge right now. We can talk about that later, but vinyl resurgence is very big. So the reissues are coming out. You know what I'm saying, Rob?
They are. It's interesting because South Soul Records actually reissued dear friends of mine, Sky, the group Sky, the R&B dance gold certified group. I love them. South Soul Records actually reissued their album on purple vinyl.
Wow. Article in Billboard, which I talked about in the Grammy issue. We're NARA's members, by the way, so we're big on the Vining area. And I just was a Grammy judge this year. In fact, I'm packaging my 6th year chosen, which is a very big thing. But anyway, they had an article on vinyl in Billboard, and it was a one-page article. It was really interesting. And what they said was vinyl had catapulted last year Lady Gaga and Paul McCartney's albums into #1 spots because of the order of vinyl and the selling out of vinyl in quantity, which is a very interesting article. And that went to make a point. It went to other artists that reissued vinyl with their album, and because of the sale, catapulted the numbers into bigger figures. So, it's a very interesting thing. It's very popular now. We're members of the Making Vinyl event, judge it every year, Judith and I. The entries are amazing, just as much as the Grammy packaging entries. And we're very happy about that, and very happy to see vinyl coming back, because that's where our life was major. In our life, the major part of our life was vinyl. And so when it changed, we said, oh, my God. I was waiting online in a movie theater. I was working for ESP Disc, which is a very famous first album jazz label before this. And then they dissolved, and then not dissolved, but went their route. And then I was waiting for anything. I'm waiting online in a movie theater, and I'm talking to this usher named Stephen Taylor. And we're just talking, and he says, and we got into this thing about album covers, and he said, well, I'm working on an album now, Stephen says, called Blank Generation, Richard Hell and the Voiders. And if you know that, it's one of the biggest punk albums ever. So he says, I need a type guy. That's how he said it. I'll never forget this. I need a type guy. So I said, okay, bring me in. And he did the illustration on the inside, and I ended up doing very simple type on it. And that led me into Sire. So Sire threw me into John Gillespie, was the art director then, and he liked that album. So he says, without even looking at my portfolio, he said, well, let's try this. So he threw me into the Ramones and said, I can't promise anything. And they were crazy guys, if you knew them. And they were nice guys, though. They really liked me, but they were really crazy to be thrown into. But they liked my work, which I didn't know until later. Marky Ramone on a Sirius show told me. But these guys were a big part of my life. And I did some iconic covers, such as Road to Ruin, with the famous John Holmstrom front cover photograph, and End of the Century, the Mick Rock photograph, the red one, which you see, and then the famous single, Don't Come Close, and of course, Rock and Roll High School single, which is a movie was made from that. And then we got The Lower Left is Separate. That's D.D. King, which Judith and I worked on, and that's a story in itself. Bob Gruen did all those photographs. We had a lot in the front and a lot in the back of Gruen, because when I got Gruen's photograph, I said, oh, my God, I can't pick one like normal album cover. He's got a lot of great photos, so let's screw this thing out, front and back cover. And everybody says, if you don't like the album, you'll love the album cover. So, and Judith worked on the logo for D.D. King, which is interesting. We were sitting at lunch. Judith can tell you the story. Sitting at lunch, and we're at a place called the Acme Diner in New York. And she looked up at the top, and she saw the logo for Acme. And that gave her the idea for the logo design. And she did that with Pat Kernan, who worked on a lot of our CBS stuff, which you see, and later some of the stuff, and a great illustrator. And that evolved into the, right, Judith? That evolved into the logo. Yeah. And that's just kind of the story with that album. And we worked with Dee Dee, and Vera Ramon King at that time. And so that how that cover evolved, but it turned out to be a beautiful cover,
Absolutely.
The music, if I may add, the music was not that great, Robin. The album itself did not do very well. People did not like it very much. But Salavetz, the cover, Spencer and I think the cover is beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, we did by the way, we did an event at the Howell Gallery in 2017 called It's a Long Way to the Top, which is our motto, by the way, from AC/DC. could go to anybody struggling in the career and getting to the top. But anyway, we did that event, and it was going over our life. It was a packed house, by the way. And it was all about our music design, and we had guests, John Holmstrom, who we work with on, I work with on Road to Ruin, front cover, and the famous Sylvia Reed, the wife of Lou Reed, who we worked with on Lou Reed and Velvet Underground packaging. But as we show here on the lower left is a picture of us four at the Howl event. And below to the right is the packaging. We were judged, one of the years we judged packaging for the Making Vinyl event, a whole bunch of us seen with the album covers. And then, of course, to the top right, we had New York Album. And to the lower right, we had Magic and Lost, which were the two Lou Reed albums we designed with Sylvia. And that's a story because Waring Abbott, the photographer on the top, the New York Album, he called me up and he said, Lou wants a portfolio, Spencer. And I worked with Waring before, so that was nice. And I sent our portfolio down. Next thing I know, Sylvia Reed enters our door. And we don't know how we're all going to work together. That's the first thing. I mean, you don't know what's going on, and you have to work with this person. So I didn't, I let my mind flow with that, but it turned out to be an incredible union. I mean, she turned out to be such a creative person and blended in with what we wanted, respected what we did. And by the way, we never had a change on those albums. Never. Lou never changed anything. We just went right in. She'd bring the packaging back ideas. He didn't even say a word. So that's a sign of acting out something that he really liked, and it turned out that we did the Velvet 1993 packaging we did after that. But the union with Sylvia was amazing. And Judith could tell you about a similar story where Sylvia was never respected by the record companies and what she did at all. And of course, early in my life, when I walk around with Judith to clients, I mean, they didn't even recognize Judith. It was just she was in the shadow. You see, that was bad. And
because there was this chauvinistic attitude, if I may say this, at all the meetings that we would go to, I experienced this for many years. This happened, and they, the people at these meetings, the men, there were very few. I can't even remember any meetings where there were women other than myself. Spencer,
right.
Do you recall?
No,
and
you're right.
Unfortunately, I responded accordingly, stayed in the background,
Right.
Came to eye contact or conversations or questions or directions that we discussed, all were directed at you.
In my life, you were a very big part of it, so it hit me about this stuff eventually. And the thing I noticed about Joan Jett, Robin, loves Joan Jett, is that Joan Jett always talks about the struggle of women in music. I mean, that's one of the big ordeals. But Joan is a big thing with fighting for women. And what we're talking about is the struggle of women in whatever area besides music. So it goes into all different areas, and I totally agree. We're doing a series of shows, by the way, on music designers. Jerry Hayden, who just won the Grammy, who's a phenomenal designer, who we had on one of our books, and Gil Meyerowitz, who designed for Amy Mann, who's a Grammy winner. We're putting that on our show because we want to point up women in design.
And I want to bring it back to Sylvia Reed because
right.
For many years, I didn't assert myself at these meetings. What would happen, Robin, is that Spencer and I would go back to our studio and we started to brainstorm and come up with whatever, our ideas. But it wasn't until it took many years before I asserted myself, and Sylvia Reed, Lou Reed, she was Lou Reed's creative director. She helped me with asserting myself because she was one of our first clients to directly respect my creative abilities, and so And later, and we also learned from her that she too had a difficult time,
Right.
being Lou's creative director because she was a woman. She also
Right.
had some, difficulties with how people treated her and the respect that she received. So
yeah, exactly. Thinking about this a lot. Kenny Laguna and Meryl Laguna, the managers of Joan Jett, now they have a great relationship as managers, but it's a man and a woman. And Kenny always gives Meryl the creative area, which we get involved with in all the work that we did. And there's an example of a dynamic woman working with a guy, and they're both dynamic, but, let her do her thing. And it affected me, too, that every time I meet Meryl, she was the one who gave us the picture of what they wanted to be on whatever it was going to be. And always was a beautiful thing with us, it always turned out to be really great. But there's an example of a dynamic woman in the business who really is dynamic and another one of these pushes, you know what I'm saying?
Some more images, and ladies and gentlemen, there are countless. There is no way, shape, form, or fashion in 1 hour can we touch upon it. We're not even going to attempt to do that. However, I would love to talk about
all right, the Velvet Underground. Yeah, this is packaging. Let's go. Let me talk about the one on the right is a dynamic poster we all designed with Dennis Acienzo. I got to give Dennis credit here. Judith, me, and Dennis. Photographed by Ted Chin. That poster turned out to be the #1 poster Billboard Award for the best point of purchase USA poster that year. And that went along with the packaging. We go to the left, the 1993 tour, and that's Peel Off Banana, Dayglow banana disc, Dayglow colored banana disc with a booklet. And let's see, what do we got on top? It looks like the Velvet, So it's like that's that. And we, again, designing with Sylvia Reed, Judith, myself, Dennis Acienzo, photographed by Ted Chin.
We love that poster.
Yeah, poster's big. And that's a funny story because, wait, I got to tell you this, another story. Sylvia calls me up and says John Cale does not like the poster. I said, what? But it didn't matter because Lou had control over it. You know what I mean? So, but that really hit me. I said, John Cale, he's such a great musician, and I've seen stuff with him. He's got a lot of visual, but that's a mind blower. But anyway, that's a little story that with that poster. But the others loved it. Turned out to be a very dynamic. In our book, our swag book, the first one, that poster is in it. Rock art of the 90s.
Yeah, we created that image, that, believe it or not, from scratch. That was
Sylvia. Wait a minute, yes, and she said we're going to use foil from the factory, and that sets off a whole thing. And it's a very pure thing, by the way. So the banana now goes into this whole thing of becoming a metallic banana. So Judith and I hired a student from visual arts to do a 3-dimensional clay banana. And we got a very thick foil, right, Judith? And pressed it on. And I, at the top, the letters. We furnished it, is what we did. Right. And then the top with the type, I went to a plastic letter type house, which ironically had the same typeface. It was Garamond, Adobe Garamond typeface that I used on the package. So I pasted down the letters.
Spencer glued it down, and I burnished it.
Yeah, and then Ted Chin shot this. Now Ted's the photographer, and he's got to take in consideration light. What made it different was the light reflecting off the foil. So we had a hard time photographing this thing, but it worked out. And it's the other thing is it's very traditional design. It's just different pieces put together in a traditional form. So it's not like you would say computerized stuff, It's more of a traditional. That's very interesting. It's a very important point. the poster was put together very traditionally with different pieces. So anyway, the velvet background was photographed by Ted Chin, and that blended into the poster. And that became a very iconic, I think, Judith and I agree, very well award-winning poster.
It was a DIY poster, do-it-yourself poster.
Right.
And landed you in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I wish I had it.
Well, that's, I mean, yeah, it's like, people look at it, it's like the poster to us is one of our favorite posters. I mean, it's so well designed. It just happened. Everything, right, Judith, just came together. It's like when I worked on Fear of Music with Talking Heads, same thing happened. Everything just, there's a cover at the top that I worked on with Talking Heads, David Byrne, Chris Franz, Tina Weymouth, Jerry Harrison. And let me tell you the story. Talking Heads, each cover was assigned, the idea of each cover was assigned to each member of the group. So it happened that when we got to Fear of Music, which turned out to be the cover that really, the album that really brought them into Billboard charts, Jerry Harrison he was the one to get the concept for this cover. So Tina Weymouth's brother's an architect, and he goes to her brother's house, and he sees this vinyl pattern on the floor of the kitchen. And he says, wait a minute, that pattern, I love it. That's the cover. So I ended up doing the type on it with David in the group. We picked a typewriter face. I went to a type house with a whole bunch of women typing, and I said, Fear of Music, Talking Heads. And they typed all kinds of things in different typewriter fonts. And this is the one I picked. I tied it together with a band around it. Gave on the cover, added the Dayglow green type. And by the way, it's the last cover without a barcode, so the black went to the back really nice. There was no bothering a barcode to infringe on the art. And it's a very simple cover, has a great inner sleeve, but it was nominated for a Grammy. And it's in the, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame vinyl collection. And it's in the MoMA permanent collection. So, and it's one of the most outstanding covers ever. It's in the 100 Best Album Cover book by Storm Thorgerson from Hypnosis. It's an iconic cover. I'm very happy to work on it. And I worked on single sleeves also for Talking Heads. And Take Me to the River was a classic single sleeve, very famous one. That was in a MoMA show called Side of Music Part 1, this Side of Music Part 1. And that was a big music graphic show that sleeve was shown. But it was great working with them. It was like we were all great designers. They had a RISD background, a lot of them. I had the Yale background in design, taught by Yale teachers. So it was like we blended together. It was kind of like it really worked out great. And what a trip, it was a great trip for them. And working with people who were artists too, great designers. So it's kind of like, it's such a great thing working with great designers, Yeah, the top left, John Lee Hooker, famous. It's on an album cover called The Best of John Lee Hooker, Rhino Records. I was hired to do promo photographs for John Lee Hooker. I went out to a race car. It was a race car speedway. He was playing there in the summer. And I went to his trailer and I had to shoot him in a trailer for, I don't know, within 10 minutes or something. And before he went on, and this shot is the last shot. This is what's interesting. The last shot on the sheet, on the sheet. And it turned out to be a great shot. And it turned out to be, later it's used on the cover of that album. The bottom left is me and, let's see, who else is in there? There's Judith on the right. And Iggy Pop is on the top center with our book at his event. I met Iggy as our book. He loved Mick Rock, big fan of Mick Rock, who shot him on his own stuff. And we miss Mick. He was a big part of our life. I worked with him on End of the Century album cover, which was very famous. But Iggy, okay, so then Iggy Pop at the top. On the bottom, Lenny Kaye pointing to the 45 book, and Peter Buck from REM on the right, backstage. Lenny is important. He was part of the Patti Smith group. We have interviewed him. He's a dynamic musician, and he wrote the foreword to the book. That was very important. He wrote the foreword. He's a big vinyl collector, big 45 collector. To the top right is a picture, and top right down, pictures of me with famous drummers at events. Me at the top with Tommy Price and Clem Burke of Blondie. And Tommy played for many years with Joan Jett, of course, and Billy Idol. And on the bottom, the famous Zach Starkey, who I interviewed on the left with Punk Globe magazine, and met a dynamic, by the way, not only a drummer, but a great guitarist. I saw him on Showcase. In the middle is Tommy Price again, and to me on the right, it was such an honor meeting these great drummers, in music. And Zach is such a dynamic guitar player, which people do not know. I saw him play guitar. Wow. People know him for drumming, for the Who tour and all that, and Alice Cooper Group, Hollywood Vampires. But he's an amazing guitar player. That's a real trivia thing. Most people don't know. And now Seymour Stein in the center. Of course, Judith and I worked on Lou Reed stuff with Seymour, and I did a lot of Sire packaging. And Seymour was awarded an award, the CBGB award thing, and that was that event. And we were honored to have a picture taken with him. He passed away. We did which was Judith's idea, to do a tribute show to him, which was a phenomenal idea. And it turned out to be now that interview, a tribute to Seymour Stein, is in the Rock and Roll Audiovisual Archive collection. And they're showing it there. It's a very big, because Seymour, by the way, founded the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was president for many years. He was inducted there and also founded Sire Records. So he's a big wheel. His name is as big as Clive Davison, or Chris Blackwell from Ireland. I mean, his name is historic. And he had a book called Siren Song, which everybody should get. And it's a whole book on his life. It's called Siren Song. It's a very incredible book. Seymour had great stories. I mean, his stories are phenomenal. And he was with all the greats of music. I mean, he knew all the greats of music. We were very honored to design for this man. Man is historic in life, That's our, we've done 21 major pop culture books in different areas. In our film area, this book is interesting. I remember I walked into Judith's office and I said, we got to do a movie poster book. And Judith right away goes, independent film. Okay, that's it. Boom, that's it. So that we got a contract right away from Abrams to do this book. And it's the first book ever on which you believe on the independent film area. And it's a dynamic book. And it has profiles of famous directors, famous posters from indie films that are famous. It's a beautifully designed book. And Judith does the interior design and also works on the book cover sometimes. And I work on the book cover. But Judith in the interior designs the books. And her design is phenomenal. I mean, she goes over the top in design. She's not a usual, what I call the usual book designer. She will bring in ideas that you would never think about in designing a book. For instance, we did a motorcycle book. So normally you see black type with photographs. No, Judith says, wait a minute. I'm going to use percent of black for the type. I call it Judith's percentage, I don't know, whatever. And the type is like a, wait a minute, the type, let me go through this. The type is like a gray, a darker gray. So that is very important because visually it's like a fifth color. So it also makes your photographs pop out. You have black type like everybody does with photographs. Photographs don't pop out, and they pop out in this case. That's just one idea she had. Her other ideas, like in the rock poster book, she would bring parts of different posters into that book. In this book, she lays it out really beautifully. All the books, she brings in phenomenal creative design ideas that nobody else would ever think about.
When I'm designing a book I always felt that there was such a waste. When you open up a book, you have the left side, you have, in the front, and then you have the right side and the back, and they're usually blank. There's nothing there, and so you have the end papers. And I thought, why don't we put art? It's important to put art into those end papers. So, I thank God it was, everybody agreed to it. So I would take little images from various posters and blow it up and put it in the end papers. And I did that in a lot of the books that I designed. The end papers.
Yeah, Judith made sure from front to back cover, including the end papers, that everything was totally designed.
Yeah, it's important to have art.
It was a fluid, complete 100% designed book from front to back.
Visually driven.
To the book. Nobody ever thinks about things like Judith's thinking about. So I've got to point out and emphasize that the book from front to back cover and is totally 100% designed.
And by the way, guys, we have a couple of comments and questions. So I'm going to actually bring the comments on so that you can see. And this one says, very interesting and informative. And I've got to tell you, MC4, thank you for logging on and for watching tonight's episode. And, I've got to say, I don't know about you guys, okay, but it's not every day you get to hear the behind the scenes, the backstory of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Not what was some of the technology used when album covers were created with special effects, other than the photographs of the art?
Well, yeah, I mean, computer, brought in. Judith became the hands-on person with us. I mean, she really controls that. And her son now is involved with us, Justin, who just did an album cover with us. Is phenomenal. Is in our in our stable. Yeah. But go ahead, Judith. Go ahead.
I mean, before the computers came, we were working on design before computers came on the scene, and Spencer was doing all the paste up and mechanicals. Right. So I don't know if anybody listening out there knows about paste ups and mechanicals and rubber stamp, and Spencer is like a whiz at that. So he was doing that up to the point that computers came on the scene, and then once computers entered the design world, I took over, and practically everything that we did was done with computer design, which is being used today. So yeah, that's what we use. Mainly, our main tool was the computer.
Yeah. And also, I want to talk about, besides this, which is very important, our WCBS graphics that we did for WC, because this is like, we've done I want people to know we're very famous in other areas of design. So one of them was like, if I could show it, I don't know if you have the pictures of this is just one example of on the left, we have Art of the Modern Movie Poster Book, 1500 movie poster book, which is phenomenal. That Judith's incredible design on the book interior. On the top, we have the WCBS invite card. Did a Buddy Holly card on the right for CBS. The bottom is the Russell Simmons hired us to do a hip hop concert. Judith did some artwork on the card and this invite card, and it's amazing design, totally different than any invite you would see. And on the right is the Swag 2 book, the rock poster book, which was the second of the series.
The independent movie poster book, 500 pages. That took a year to do. It took a year for that, for us to design.
So
go ahead, show the calendars.
Yeah, let me show the calendar. Rob, so get me on here. Okay, good. So this was, the salespeople had to have Renee Cassis, CBS FX. So this is for the salespeople, and especially me. Pat Kernan did all these illustrations. Let me do that. Let me show you another one. We got that. This is another theme. This is another theme, psychedelic era type thing. And then, oh God. This is great. This is like a baseball theme with all people are DJs from CBS. If you see this picture, it's really great. And then the last one I'll show, if I can open this up. Yeah, it's another one. And we did a number of them. We did more than this, but this is the idea of what we did. And these calendars, everybody loved these calendars. They're beautiful, you know.
Magnificent.
So CBS gave us a lot of rain on special pack. And we even did, wait a minute, we did an award room for them, the CBS Crystal Globe Awards. These were metal plaques to be put on a wall for all artists that sold over 1 million overseas. So we had to hire an architectural artist. We had to get people who made metal plates, literally engraved. Gorgeous wall. I can't show it to you because it's only on slides, but it's a gorgeous Crystal Globe Award room and a Crystal Globe Award, which was on top of a line of plaques of all famous musicians that included like anybody who was CBS International. So they handle artists that handle over 1 million sales overseas, like Michael Jackson and Madonna. And that was an honor because we went beyond print. And then they trusted us to go into this other amazing thing, like a Crystal Globe Award room. Hello. And, that's a big thing when people trust you and respect you as designers and put you in a totally different area, you know?
Absolutely. We have time for one more comment. Where viewers,
Yep.
Wherever you are in the world, we're not ending yet, but would you please do a warm round of applause for these two magnificent individuals? If we had a film yesterday, when I tell you we had a blast yesterday during our tech check, okay?
Right, we did. That was fun.
This
Fun.
is so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a magnificent musician, composer. You're going to actually meet one another because March 30th, they're playing at the Cutting Room.
Right.
And they're magnificent. So he wants to know, do you have all of the original artwork for the more iconic album covers?
No, these album covers, all the album cover art was owned by the record labels, to emphasize that. Or the photographs went back to the photographer, or they were bought out by the managers or the record company. So we don't have any original artwork because in the way it was worked out, the record companies would own the artwork. That's how it went. You know what I'm saying? So we don't have any of the original artwork at all.
What have you not done that you'd like to do?
It's kind of like there were experiences that I had in my life. I've got to tell you a great story. Judith and I are in a cab, and we're going up to CBS. And Judith sees outside the window, and I see two musicians crossing each other. Remember, Judith? One was Mick Jagger, and one was Eric Clapton. And Judith says, wait a minute, we got to talk to Mick Jagger. And I said, no, I got to talk to Eric Clapton. Why I said that? And I don't know if Judith remembered, if she knew, we designed Tough Enough. And that album by the Fabulous Thunderbirds had Jimmy Vaughn on it. And by the way, Eric Clapton's favorite musician was Jimmy Vaughn. Favorite musician of his life. Nobody knows that. He was on an interview and said Jimmy Vaughn. He's great. And I went over to Eric Clapton because he said, well, it's okay. And I ran over to Eric Clapton. I don't know where Judith was. I forgot how to meet her eventually. But he said, send your portfolio to me, because he knew I designed Tough Enough. And that was the connection, because I had a media connection. And that's what made that. I never saw him again in my life. And I ended up not sending my portfolio, by the way. And the answer to that is I was so busy. We were so busy at that time. I must have, my brain was so filled up with things that I didn't think about it. And I often think about those times where I could have followed the Ramones, Talking Heads, and Chris Franz even told me one day, he said, well, Spence, you should have followed us because we had a rough time on the next album. But I was so busy with stuff, and Judith and I were working still, very busy with famous musicians that, very happy what happened. I'm very happy what happened because I work with those people anyway, and we just brought new people in our life which were fresh and famous, became famous, right? So I'm not at all unhappy about that.
Spencer and I have been talking about doing title design for, movies, film, TV. So that's the one area we really have not yet conquered. And, hopefully maybe in the future, that, to answer your question, that's the area that we would like to include into our work.
Yeah, I'm glad, Judith, I'm glad you brought that up. I spoke to her son, Justin, who's been involved with our last album cover, which is dynamic, and also our logo for our show, the Indie Cafe 2 show, which is a great logo. Anyway, he's in our stable now. So it's me, Judith, and Justin. And Justin has a film editing and production background. By the way, he's done film. So I think we're going to do that. I especially spoke to him today. That's our plan. I plan to try to start that energy for that motion thing. And also, Judith and I plan to do a Motion by Design 2 book. We found out that our one book that's been around for about 20 years already, 10 to 20 years, got 5 stars on Amazon. So I called up David Robbins, who worked with us on the book, and he said, why don't we do a 2 book? So that's the other thing of doing a Motion by Design. It's all about motion design. It's very popular. So these are a couple of things in our life we plan to continue, or a new phase in our life, like film. I've always been into film. Judith and I have always been into opening credits in movies. And Motion by Design book, by the way, has famous people who open up film credits in movies in that book. So it's very famous stuff, very famous film. So it's like, that's the next thing, I think. And Judith brought it up. I'm glad she brought it up. And that's very close to my heart, too.
Beautiful. Any final words for aspiring designers who watch tonight's live?
I think I always believe, first of all, you got to be good at what you do. If you're good at what you do, go for it. Eventually, you'll get into some place. We were fortunate. We done good design. Sounds like an ego trip, but we did. We show it. We acted. It's acted out. We're respected by major institutions. We're in the AIG. By the way, we're in the AIGA collection. We're in the MoMA collection. We're in the New York NYPL Lou Reed archival collection, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archive collection. But I want to make a point. We were just in a big NYPL Lou Reed show at Lincoln Center that was huge for 6 months, and our work was shown. And that was a very big show on the Lou Reed archives. And it had our album covers in it, and we were very honored about that. That was a big show I had to mention. And by the way, we've been in major shows. The Ramones show that was on tour with Queens and Grammy Museum. The NYPL, that's the NYPL show, yeah. And, we've been in Joan Jett. We're in the Who Loved Rock and Roll show that was in traveling across the country with our Joan Jett cover. We've been in major museum shows and also traveling shows. So we're very honored about that. I had to mention that. And also, we're mentioning 2 books that are very big. Lou Reed Life by Anthony DeCurtis, very big book author who was famous for his Clive Davis New York Times best-selling book. We're mentioning that, which is about Lou Reed. And I Want You Around, Ramones book that's just out about the making of the Ramones high school movie, which I mentioned in. And of course, the famous Monty A. Melnick, On the Road with the Ramones book, which my album covers are shown in the book and credited. I want to mention those books. Judith and I have been profiled in many books, by the way, and we're very honored. So that's another part of our life. I think I had to fit that in. I'm sorry, but we're active in design still. We're going to be doing some more stuff, and I want to tell people that. So I hope you could see us, our work.
Judith,
I was going to just share a designer statement, but what I wanted to also say to people that are watching, and that people who are interested in becoming just, graphic designers, whether they want to design for themselves, for the fun of it, or an album cover, a book cover, whatever. Spencer and I always believe that to create a really good design is always to think out of the box, to be bold and to be cutting edge. You bring design concepts to their simplest form, and which works. We always felt that the simplest form works the best. It works best for the artist as well as everyone else that's involved. And we also, were very, it was very important to our attention to detail, and was important to us as well as our love for music. We, both of us, just are such huge fans of music, even though neither of us play an instrument. But, being such enormous fans of music and loving music helped us to convert some of, these concepts, come up with these exciting and fresh concepts. They were breakthroughs in album cover designs and the CD designs that we've done, and the logo designs, in the books that we designed. We just, it just happened to work because we had a passion for all of that. And I feel that if anyone out there has that same passion, we were lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time as well, and meeting the right people at the right time.
Yeah. We've designed for various, also all varieties of music. People, we're beyond rock, by the way. I've designed for jazz. I've designed for hip hop, Tone Loc, Young MC, Big Daddy Kane.
Blues,
I've designed for different areas. Judith and I have designed in different areas. Jazz, by the way, jazz. I did Pharoah Sanders' first album, by the way. So it's like we got that coverage. And I think in order to create, you've got to be not locked into one plane. You've got to be in different areas, like our life has been. The Crystal Globe Awards, for instance, example of going beyond. And if we go into film, we're into motion. So it's like, to show your creativity, you've got to be in different areas to show your creativity.
Be open to it.
Right?
Open.
Yeah. And you got to be open to that, and don't get locked into one area. Like I'm saying, we're not just rock and roll. We've done many broad things. And that's what makes you better. But I'll tell you the most important thing, typography. We, both of us, have a great quality typography mind. That's one of the most important things to lock this together. With a visuality in our head that goes with it, whether it's photographs or art. And you've got to have great typography. I'm going to tell you, most people don't. It's not a thing it's easy to teach. You have to have it. So, but there are great designers like Stefan Sagmeister and Jerry Hayden or Amy. I'm mentioning names of great, John Posh or John Berg, who's famous, Paula Scher. I'm just saying, all these people, Vaughn Oliver, Malcolm Garrett, these people had great minds and for typography and putting the visuals together. And you have to have that. And that's true of photography. It's hard to teach photography. You have to have it inside of you, I think. That's not an easy thing. I mean, most people don't have that, really. In a percentage, most people do not have that. Most people are mediocre. That does not make you great. What makes you great is if you have the greatness of each thing and you're able to act it out. A very important point. You know, it's not easy to teach things. It's more like you have to have a lot of it. You have to have inside, right, Judith? You have to have that gift. You know, that's what I believe.
True.
Robin?
Well, I will tell you that tonight has been divine for me. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are watching tonight live, when I tell you they are such dear hearts and to be so accomplished, right? And they're so down to earth, really and truly. And I think that when I first learned about your history, I was impressed, yes, of course. But when I realized who and how you are as individuals, that really took it over the hill for me. So I would love to take this opportunity to thank both of you for joining me here at the Imagine That with Robin Richie platform and our viewers across the globe, wherever you are, here in New York City to Zimbabwe, wherever. For all of you. And the two of you, I think that, and I'm so grateful that you made the decision that you have, because the legacy that you created is something that will continue to inspire, to motivate, to challenge, to uplift, and to provoke conversations such as tonight. And I just want to say thank you both, all of you for logging in. Thank you. And please tell us about your podcast. Tell us.
Well, we have our Indie Cafe 2 show. We interview famous people in different areas, authors of music books and musicians and filmmakers. We're on a big. We just had a great interview with the director Ethan Silverman, and we had Mark Bolan's son Roland on with the famous film out on Mark Bolan T-Rex, and Mark, both of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted 2020, and it's a great film about Mark Bolan and T-Rex. I mean, they're historic in music, and the film is out, and we're very excited about that film. So hopefully our podcast with them, is going to go into the Rock Hall. They plan to send the movie in. I don't know if it will, but I think it will, because already the Rock Hall has 3 of our other interviews, which are big. So I think it's going to be in there, but let's see. But that's one thing we cover, film. But we do a lot of great musicians, Lenny Kaye and Sylvia, dynamic interview with Sylvia Reed. That's in the Rock Hall. And so, we interview a lot of Willie Nile, Steve Conte. I've interviewed in the past Simon Kirk, and great names we've interviewed, and Chris Stein, Blondie. So I'm just saying, it goes on and on. We love doing that. I think what you have on your show and what we have on our show is relative. We try to help people in the industry, get them out there, promote them with our shows. You do that, we do that, and it's like a common thread,
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank
Robin.
you. Thank you.
I love you guys.
Love you too.
We love you too, Robin.
We've got to talk about She-Rock. We've got to talk about so many things that we didn't have an opportunity in an hour and 15 minutes.
No.
Wait a minute. I'll do a very short thing. I was the first album cover designer interviewed in MTV and VH1 for the Billy Squier album. Judith was the first woman designer interviewed on the famous She Rocks event in LA, which is done every year for women in music in different areas, awarded things. So that's very fast in there. And yeah.
Well, I want to say to the two of you once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salavetz, thank you so very
Thank you,
much.
Robin.
Thank you, Junior. And you're always welcome to the Imagine That with Robin Richie podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin.